town of the good, the bad, and the weird. You either live by the gun, or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And this month we are ending Folktober with a movie that we decided to try and wrap up the entire Wicker Man saga that we started back in March. We are doing the much hated and much ignored for good reasons, The Wicker Tree.
I'm kind of upset we were forced to watch this. I'm not gonna lie.
I am not. I'm glad I made you watch it. So, yeah, it's technically this episode's coming out in November, but it's November 1st. But whatever.
Yeah, close enough.
But yeah, so the Wicker Tree to give what it is. It is a companion piece to the Unholy Trilogy's original film, The Wicker Tree.
Yes.
It's written and directed by Rob Hardy, who directed the original Wicker Man. He didn't write the original Wicker Man.
Yeah.
And it's not a sequel.
No. So originally it was a screenplay that then didn't get funded, and then they took that screenplay and he turned it into a novel because he thought, I've already worked on it. Might as well finish out the thing. Fine, no problem. But then they took that novel, came back around and were like, wait, no, what if this was a movie? And I want everyone to know that the name of the novel is not Wicker Tree. The name of the novel is Cowboys for Christ. And I want you to sit with that for a second, because I read Cowboys for Christ and I went, wait a minute, that can't be right. And then I watched this movie and I went, no, that is 100% correct.
Did my church down the road make this movie?
Okay. So this movie does do something interesting. I hate that it is part of the collection around Wicker Man, because that has a very distinct vibe, a very distinct following. And this movie manages to take a different genre of movie, which we will eventually talk about, because we haven't really touched on Christian media yet. Not in the way that it, there's so much.
Not in the way I think my religious brother would like us to talk about, the movies he likes. Yeah, so as someone who, grew up with lots of friends whose parents, firmly believed, that was the only thing we were watching when we went to their house, it is a very, large rabbit hole, right? There's whole platforms that only stream Christian versions of everything. They make Harry Potter mockbusters, all kinds of shit. And
then even those who, think that that's too crossing the line and, create their own, fully their own everything, right? Full Fairly Godparents iceberg scenario. This movie manages to have watched several of those movies and listened to some podcasts about that, and then went, but what if the pagans were right? And kind of sort of was into the Wicker Man, and that's what this movie is. And if that was how this movie was presented to me, I think I would have enjoyed it more. However, I was presented this movie with the knowledge that this was part of the Wicker Man world.
It technically is.
And it technically is, but it also kind of isn't, because even Christopher Lee was like, no.
Yeah. But it does star Britannia Nicole, Henry Garrett, and Graham McTavish, which there's not any real featurettes on this. I remember...
There's really nothing on.
I remember this is back... I watched this when I was watching every single featurette on a DVD that I'd get.
Yeah.
And this one, everyone praises the movie, how it's going to be great, and it's going to be the next upcoming thing. I mean, it's your general, typical bullshit of everyone saying it's a great movie, and then...
It's a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so here's where I think the praising came from. So, originally, way back in 2002, Hardy was working on this, and on the screenplay for the original version of the movie, and he had passed it out to some friends to kind of look at and be interested in. And one of those people is our beloved Samwise Gamgee. As we have talked about and known, the man desperately wishes, at the time in 2002, to be known more as a director and less as an actor. And he is in the middle of the Lord of the Rings trilogy when he gets this. And he sees it and he's like, you know what? I think there's something here. I think this could be interesting. Passes it around to the the Lord of the Rings crowd, which we all know was a group of very, like, well-connected people. One of whom is Christopher Lee, who was on set. And they all got this and they all went, maybe. I can see the potential. And Christopher Lee had worked on the original one.
Yeah.
And Christopher Lee, as we also know, is a man who will give just about anything a go.
Well,
if he sees potential, he will give it a go.
You also have to remember Christopher Lee is super into occultism. Like, yes. He knows his shit.
The man is like the father actor of occult movies, especially horror ones. And so and he will give anything like a little run through, even if it's not necessarily good. If he thinks that there is some potential there, he will give it some thought.
By this point in his career, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, especially at this point. Because I think this was like around the filming of the second one, the second Lord of the Rings.
Probably when it was first started getting momentum, because I think this movie came out in like 2011.
It did. So 2002 was when the first draft went. Funding for that version of the movie flopped. They couldn't get anyone to buy it.
Shocking.
I know. And so it got turned into a novel. And I think in the process of turning it into a novel is where whatever they saw got drowned.
Yeah.
In Jesus Cowboys. Texas Jesus Cowboys overtook the novel, which I can understand. Because as someone who likes reading a wide variety of books, there is a genre of, like, occult Texan horror. It's not super popular. It's not, like, a well-known genre. But it is something that, like it would read well. Like, it would be a fun little novel that would, like, go in with the kind of the themes. I can see how the imagery, when done in word format, could, like, really pull it all together. And then you take something that was a screenplay, then moved into a novel, developed into a novel, and then move it back to a screenplay, and somewhere in that translation, we lost a lot. The other part that we lost was, they never say this, but I very firmly believe that more was moved around and shifted from original writing of second version of screenplay. So, like, from novel to screenplay, and then screenplay to final version, because Christopher Lee was originally supposed to play the lead.
Huh.
But he hurt his back in filming the movie before this. Let me look, because it wasn't even like a good movie. I felt bad for him. Resident. He hurt his back filming Resident. And so they were, oh, well, shucks, can you be in this and all? He was like, briefly. My back hurts so bad. So they rewrote the role for a much younger man. A different guy who was already on, our now lead character, our now lead man. Right?
Yeah.
So, and then when they did that, they went, oh, well, shucks, we wrote the lead woman to match Christopher Lee's age. So then they had to rewrite and recast for her to match him. And they never say this. They just are like, no, we like reworked it and it's fine. I fully believe that there were more changes made when that happened. And as we have talked about, who acts and what levels of, like, creativity they bring to the table drastically changes the outcome of a movie. Yeah. And we also know that Christopher Lee can completely rewrite something on the fly and it makes it better. And I think that all of those pieces came together, and what was once a shining possibility has now been reduced to garbage.
Yes. So for those who don't know about the plot of The Wicker Man, it's about a pair of born-again Christian missionaries who go to Scotland to...
from Texas, and they're pop singers. Those are important to the plot.
Yes. And go to Scotland to try and bring them to Jesus. Which, by the way, I wonder about this a little bit, because, like...
I have answers. I've dug into this.
Cool. Because I don't know anything of missionary work outside of, like, going to, like, what we consider lower world countries.
I know a lot because I have been on a dive for this.
Okay. Because, like, I looked it up, and if this movie was set in, like, 2011, because they don't actually give the time frame.
No, but that feels right.
I wonder why they thought the Scots were lost, because, I mean, even then, it's estimated 54% of the Scottish is Catholic. Yeah, but
okay.
63% of the U.S. is religious as well.
Yes,
but this is of Christian. This is just 54% is Christian.
Yes,
of some denomination.
So the holding faith is, for the most part, a version of Catholic.
Okay.
And I understand Catholics, that there are variations on Catholic, and most of the people who make these calls would like to say that they are not the same. And then a lot of people who are in Catholicism are like, not that different. However, when it comes to missionary work, something that must be well known, and we cannot deny, because it is proven and documented, is that certain groups, and like they never come out and say exactly what evangelical nonsense the main characters are like based out of. We can only make inferences from them being Texas, pop singers, and like a vibe of the church that we see at the beginning. But from those, we kind of have like a group that we can kind of sort of guess.
Okay.
And it is very well known and documented that group does not consider Catholics Christians.
Wait, can you elaborate?
No. I have dug into this. I have watched. I'm not shitting you, because I went on a rabbit hole recently because I had a similar realization with a different movie where it was a different horror movie where similar premise, where missionaries went to a different country to save these people. And it was, I believe, a South American country that they went to go and be missionaries to. However, the country that they picked is predominantly Catholic because the Spaniards beat them there.
Okay.
But from what we can tell, Catholicism doesn't count. Catholicism doesn't like stop the missionaries from coming. You have to be their specific Christian for it to work. And this is something that we've seen a lot in not just like international missionary work, but also just like homebrew missionary work.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of the Mormons here saying that the Native Americans are truly the descendants of Israel.
Kind of. Okay, that's part of their like deep held beliefs that like even some of their own followers are like, no, that's silly. That's different. That's more like, okay, it's more like how the Mormons do not think other Christians are also going to heaven.
Okay.
Even though they consider themselves part of the Christian faith. It is the same way.
Oh, it's that kind of bullshit.
It is that kind of bullshit. Where like most people, most normal, rational, religious people do not think this way. However, it in the movie and a lot of people in real life, this seems to be a trend. Whether or not we want it to, it is something that happens regularly. This is not like a far-fetched thing.
Okay.
I do think though that like there is also definitely a whitewashing in like the missionary world where like if it is different than what you are used to seeing, if they are different than what you're used to seeing, they must need Jesus. They must not be nearly as advanced as you. Which is bullshit. But that's like part of where it all comes from. However, I do find it hilarious that this movie does not go out of its way for almost 95% of the movie to make the small town in Scotland, which they don't go to really. They like start off in Dublin, I think. Yeah,
they land in Dublin and then
then mosey on to another small town-ish, but it's not even that small of a town.
Yeah, I mean, it's God, I have it written down.
I can't remember the name of the town.
Yeah, I can't either, but it doesn't really matter. It's a town that's to the northeast.
So normally in Christian movies, and eventually we will get to this when we do like a deep dive into Christian media, normally the way that they get around the obvious the obvious bias of like these are people who you do not need to be telling Jesus to, you like this is the backwards way of doing it in Christian media, especially in like movies like this, is by presenting people who are living in such an extremely different way than what like the main characters and the audience are used to. However, this movie chooses to pick the most normal white town. Yeah, well, that's the thing is like they are just basically they're just Scottish, normal Europeans.
Yeah, they're Scottish. They're not even like
it's not even portrayed in like, because like I think the Wicker Man does a nice job of showing like, oh well, these are Europeans, they're English-ish people, but they do so in a way that like from the get-go they feel cult-esque.
Well,
Whereas this one doesn't. This one waits until like the last 5 minutes of the movie to bring in the culty shit.
No, and part of that is this movie, what it does is everyone is already, like, seems to be, like, very accepting of, like, okay, yeah, come into our community. One of us.
Yes, but it's not done in the culty way that, like, helped bring Wicker Man's, like, otherness into light very easily. Like, this one is much more realistic as far as, like, you know, a cult can look like anybody. Sure.
Yeah.
But, like, at least with Wicker Man, the people had a different way of dressing. They had very backwoods styling, like in how they did schooling and medicine and, you know, their judgment system. This one, like, these people have cell phones.
Yeah.
These are normal-ass people. And then, like, in the last few seconds, they're like, oh, and by the way, we worship the sun.
Yeah. No.
What?
Well, okay, that's one thing I did want to talk about in this
I did too, because
series is, like, just even with that little bit, it loses all its symbolism from the original.
Yes.
Like,
there's almost none.
We don't even get the connection to the original until almost the end, where we get a flashback. It's bullshit.
It is.
And it's so minimal and pointless that it just feels like you could have made this movie without having Christopher Lee tied back, or that McTavish's character, character is tied to the old town somehow, or for some reason.
And here's the other part I'm confused on, because several sources, without any, like, other source than just, like, the watcher assuming that Christopher Lee's character is playing the same character in both movies. However, Christopher Lee, who, as we know, is someone who, like, does a lot of deep diving into his roles, and usually is not one to bullshit something after the fact. He's usually very consistent with his information and knowledge. Has on multiple occasions come out and said, no, this is not the same character.
No.
And it would make sense for it to be the same character, but I have to believe Christopher Lee. He's never led me wrong.
Yeah.
So, like, this is just a random man.
Yeah. No, it on top of that, like, there's no real, you know, like you said, there's no real community. We already told in the original one in Summer Isle, and we have to compare this one to Summer Isle, that we can't really even pull these two apart because they are so attempted to be interlinked.
Yes.
Like, the whole issue with the original is finding the girl, dealing with the loss of their crops, their rituals failing, and just the old ways not working that time. This one, we get like maybe like a 3-5 minute blip that this is, it's near the town of New Ada.
That's it.
And there's Tresic. But it's the New Ada nuclear station that
is causing the problem.
Yeah. It doesn't...
It's not even like a mystical force.
No. It's them trying to use their old ways to deal with, like, a nuclear disaster is such a stupid...
It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't pair well. And on top of that, like, we get, like, a board meeting of this. And that's the only information we're told of why this town's in need and why they've accepted in these Christian missionaries.
The other thing that doesn't work with this, that really is frustrating, that this movie is set and premised to be paired with the Wicker Man, is the lack of identity with the supposed cult. It is said multiple times that this is a cult. They are a dangerous cult.
Yeah.
However, we get 4 blips of, like, what their practice is.
Oh, yeah.
They briefly state which god that they're following. However, like, I did some digging and they kind of don't do it right. Which is fine. Like, just make up a god then.
Yeah.
Just make up a god. Don't use one that's already made, because the goddess that they claim in the movie that they are sacrificing these Texans to is Solace, which is the goddess of thermal springs in Bath, like the city of Bath. And she's also a goddess for curses, but kind of like, not really like making curses, it's more like washing away curses. So, like, the goddess of a hot bathtub, it does not care about your Texas sacrifices. Like, but I think the reason that, like, the name is picked is because it sounds like the sun, and, like, the movie spends all of its time, like, the only imagery we get is them being like, the sun, hooray, hurrah.
Yeah.
But, like, there's no imagery in the costuming, in the architecture, in the set design. There's none.
Yeah.
There's just normal-ass people.
Well, and on top of that, so you brought up that we get a new ritual and everything.
Yes.
And it's so pulled back from the original. Like, the only thing we have is, like, we get the Wicker Tree, or we get the Wicker figures, which are... They're cool. That's kind of cool.
They look good.
But
like,
the
there's
rest
no
of it,
symbolism to them.
No, nothing else gets explained, like why they go to cannibalism, why they have to make the sacrifice into a doll. Like,
not clear.
But, like, and then on top of that, like, they're supposed to have burnt her at the Wicker Tree, but then every year that person gets turned into a doll. Like, it just doesn't work at all.
Here's the other problem I have. As someone who has a unhealthy, potentially, interest and fascination with decomposition, I have questions about the doll people.
Yeah.
So, it is implied that they are just, like, stuffed with hay and set up in this room. But there's, like, 7 ladies in there. That's 7 years at least.
No. This is exactly how dumb all this shit is, because it's a large enough town. It's not a remote community.
No! It would have made more sense if they were like, oh, well, we keep the outfit. Or we make wax figures of all of the ladies.
Yeah.
Or, like, in the original one, we keep pictures of them.
Yeah, no, it's just dumb of, like, well, they did portraits in that one, so we're going to do it this way instead and not really explain why this is part of the ritual.
And don't get me wrong, the room, like Edgar Allan Poe style, where it's, like, a bunch of dead people propped up in a room is scary. However, like, this movie completely ignores natural decomposition.
Yeah.
Like, they're not skeletons, they are just little, like, not even mushy puppets in a normal, unair-conditioned room.
Well, they don't even say, like, what they're expecting it to do other than, like, hey, there was nuclear cleanup that we gotta do. Like, it
does not explain.
No, like, like, this is magically gonna go away. It's not like growing crops and why you have light one year, why you have droughts. Like, it makes nothing out. And on top of that, like, they get both their sacrifices. They get the dude... And their leader dies. Shocking. We're going to spoil a bunch of shit here.
I mean, what's little there is to spoil.
Yeah, and they got 2 deaths. So is Beth's death or murder just revenge?
Unexplained. The other thing that doesn't really make sense is, unlike Midsummer, which did a very good job of explaining the limitations of being a small, closed group and knowing that they are a small, closed group who will need fresh people to be brought in because you can't just continue to, be dating your siblings. This one, they make it known that, like, they are having a problem because of the radiation. And instead of the solution being like, oh, we either move or clean up or magic the radiation away, the solution is just to bring in a healthy, normal guy and assume that that does not fix the problem.
Well, also, what I think part of it, too, is there's a lack of children in this movie. And I think that's part of it, too, is that
there is exactly 2 children.
The reason they're doing this whole fertility ritual is so that way the town will be blessed with young ones again. I think it's, like, mentioned, like, once.
It is.
But it's not made a heavy theme of the movie at all.
No.
And part of that is because all the characters are just bouncing around all the time. They're not really tied to each other, like the main Texas guy.
Yes.
Like they mentioned that he's brought in because they need new stock, and all the time the girl that he's into is screwing some random Italian dude, and like that's the scene they try and make so sexy, and it just does, like, none of it's good.
No, and this is the other thing that is strangely done about this movie. Is it's 2 Texans in Scotland for like 90% of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. We can enjoy that nonsense all we want. Like, that's fine. Doesn't matter. But what is strange is the obsession with almost like eye candy-ness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, unlike other folk horror films. Because let's be very clear. Like, this film was not meant to just be like a film. It was meant to be folk horror. And most of those, when they have, like, a theme around sexuality and sex and reproduction, do so in a way to invoke some form of emotion. Whereas this one just feels like a bad sitcom.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of it, too, is that even, like, they try and make this film so sexy because the 2 main characters are despite being celibate until they're married and they've promised themselves to each other, even though they're born again. She used to sing trashy
She's so embarrassed. She's so embarrassed that she used to be a country pop singer.
Yeah, they keep putting themselves in situations where they're like, "Oh, we gotta calm down. Go take a cold shower," kind of bullshit.
Eat a raw potato.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the other thing that makes no sense to me, because this movie, and this is why I think there is something that was lost in one of the, like, between one of the translations, because I do think the concept in a folk horror movie of having this, like, religious pressure to be celibate until marriage, and then having that temptation be there in two separate ways, and how that character handles it, like, that sounds on paper very good. The way this movie handles it, though, is by having the man not really be that upset that he has, you know, broken his vow.
Yeah.
And not even, like, just that, he's also cheated on his girlfriend multiple times. Fiance, worse. But instead of, like, having that be, like, a character-defining spot, all we really get is, like, some very eye-candy, like, shots of him in a cowboy hat and his tits out.
Yeah, they focus heavily on his ass, like Ghost of Tsushima style.
Which, like, but if that was, like, there to, like, ramp up to something, I could understand it. Well, but it doesn't. It's just there for your viewing pleasure.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because we have that scene where he screws her in the lake that's supposed to be where everyone goes for, like,
all I can
fertility.
think of is leeches up the ass, but you do you.
Yeah. But, like, immediately from that scene, he goes and he's like, "I can't be here anymore. I gotta go. This just isn't for me."
But the movie does not explain why he has this conviction.
No.
Because even from the beginning, it is made very clear that he's not really into the whole promise ring thing.
Yeah.
Like, he's not the one breaking up the kissing at the beginning. She's the one who's like, "No, we made a promise."
Well, I think that's part of it, too, is they tried to make it so, like, hit the same notes of the original one.
Yeah.
But do it differently, where they're outsiders. Oh, but they're Christians, but they were once not very Christian.
And here's the thing. The first one does such a great job of having a male understanding and gaze of, like, the desire to be pure because of your religious beliefs and, like, your cultural beliefs.
Yeah.
But then have that temptation and having that battle and showing it on screen. Like, yes, it's a little, theatric at times, but you get the idea, and it doesn't feel, like, too much like a modern girly pop interpretation of it. Like, it feels very much like a realistic temptation and battling between himself. This man has had no battles.
Nope.
Not a single battle. And then out of nowhere, he's upset.
His only battle has been to get into his girl's pants.
Yes. I 100% agree that has been his only real battle. And the other part that is very frustrating, because it could have been done very well. Because this is a horror movie. We have room to explore, like, so much. That's the whole point of horror, is to have the room in a movie to explore themes that would normally be off limits or taboo. We have a movie where the entire premise is that the old ways are better and win. Mm-hmm. And yet, we do not get any explanation on why their Christian people are here in the first place.
No, I think they're invited by. I think what the movie briefly hints, or maybe even says, it's just so poorly conveyed, is that they've been invited to this area to convert them. If
this had been backwards, where, like, it was not a horror movie and is a traditional, like, Christian-based film, then that knowledge isn't needed, because it is something that is a standard knowledge to the audience. Having a sister church and having missionary trips planned out by travel agents and groups that's well documented, you get, like, a discount to go. It's really honestly just tourism with, like, some extra steps thrown in.
Yeah.
Like, that would have been fine, but that's not what this movie is, and that's not who this movie is made for.
No.
So most of your audience isn't going to understand why these people picked here and why there's just the two of them.
And maybe that's a good question, because who is this movie really made for? Because I think the goal was to, hey, you like Wicker Man? Well, hey, we made a sequel or a kind of companion piece to it.
Yeah. And that's still how it's advertised. It is still advertised as the companion piece to Wicker Man. And yet, it really isn't. No. It really honestly has almost nothing to do with Wicker Man, other than the overarching idea.
Yeah, no. And even then, that overarching idea is very broad in its overarching.
Yes. And here's my last, biggest, and most loud complaint. The tree people, cool, looks great. The only, like, cult part we get is a very loose and undefined understanding of how May Queens work. With no, like, at least in Wicker Man, they go through the explanation of, like, oh, our town puts on a parade, we have all these characters, and one of the characters is this person, and you could be this person. Like, there's, like, there's more to it. Do they explain everything? No. But that's part of the, like, mystery and, like, allure to the folklore, right?
Well,
this one, there's just some random guys with their butt cheeks out on parade.
Well, you know what it has a lot of similarities to?
No, I don't.
Midsommar.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't, and I'm going to explain why. So Midsommar did enough research to understand some of the base culture. Did they take it and bastardize it? Yes, they did. But they added enough to it where it can be understood that someone at some point in that town's history had the original concept of midsummer and May Queens and pole dancing, and the elements are there, and they have bastardized it for their own religion. This one did not do that.
If you break it down at its core,
there is a basic scene of a girl in a white dress with some flowers. And some dudes with their butt cheeks hanging free in the wind.
No. This movie, if you break it down to its core, it's a movie about a relationship.
Yeah.
It's a rocky relationship.
That is very true.
They're going to a foreign place to explore the culture.
They're not
really.
They're not. They're there to destroy the culture.
Change the culture. Guy cheats on girl.
Yeah.
Guy gets punished for it. But this one, the girl doesn't live. It's basically the same relationship and events that
it is
happen in Midsommar, but done shittily.
It is done so shittily that you lose the importance and understanding of what the cult is.
Yeah.
Because yes, the base bullet point premise between this and Midsommar are similar. However, Midsommar puts into detail, and through showing literally the whole movie, explaining, like, this is our cult. Isn't it nice here? Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you say our collection's missing just you?
Wouldn't you say my collection's complete?
Once you join. This one, however, does not appear to be a cult at all until the last literally 5 minutes of this movie, where there's like several men just naked. One gal's got her tits free, you do you. But, like, how is that cult? Like, there's no overarching sense of community.
Yeah.
There's really no overarching leader. There is a leader in the town. He does not seem qualified for the job.
I don't even think they meet him until, like, almost the end of the movie.
They don't. And then the horror part of it, the part that is supposed to, like, tie this back to the original with the suspense and the understanding that, like, sacrifice and death and blood is required, we get cheated out of that because she has, like, a Braveheart yelling against the cult people. Where she just, like, kicks their leader into the fire and is like, take that, bitches!
Yeah.
And they're like, cool. And then she dies anyway.
Yeah.
Which still doesn't make sense, because, like, what? How did we get from... And it's not even that long. It's literally, like, 5 minutes, and you kind of blink and you're like, wait a minute, I thought she was winning.
Yeah.
And now she's dead and in the museum.
Yeah.
And also, the other thing that's very strange is... Again, this movie tries very hard to convince you that this is part of the world and culture based off of the Wicker Man, and yet they are vacuuming the carpets.
Yeah.
It is a prominent thing in this movie, is that they have electricity, they have technology, they are part of the modern world, where that was the whole point of the first one. That they were not part of the modern world. Yeah,
modern enough. They had electricity.
They had electricity, but, like, they also prominently displayed, like, we don't believe in teaching our children real world things. We teach them via song and sex acts in the public square. This one, they're like, no, we send our kids to the public school.
They don't. Well, no, they don't have kids. That's the thing. There's one child we see. If they had
children, they would be going to the public schools. These people pay for the YMCA passes at the next town over.
Yeah.
These are not, like, a remote cult. This is not even, like, a real cult. This is just some crazy people.
It's just a scattered pile of bullshit.
It is, and that's kind of disappointing, because honestly, looking at it from, like, a Bones perspective. Like, one of the things I like doing is looking at a movie and saying, like, would this have been better as a book? Or vice versa, like, if I've read the book, was this necessarily be turned into a movie, and did that improve anything?
Yeah.
I can see where a shitty novel of this would be enjoyable, and honestly, probably sell pretty decently.
Yeah.
But because it's a movie, I honestly think that there is no reason to go read it, because it doesn't work backwards. You can't take a shitty novel and have a shitty movie come after it and then be like, look, don't you want to read the shit version of it? Like, no. I would rather just read.
Yeah. Well, and despite how atrocious this movie is, the most atrocious thing about this movie isn't the rest of the movie. It's a set of lines in it when she's trying to convince them that, hey, we know you're good people. Mm-hmm. You're proud people. You have you know of Alexander Graham Bell or well, no, not. Well, they list off a couple Scottish people.
Yeah.
And they have the fucking audacity to say, and Braveheart.
They do.
Not even William Wallace. Just
not even William Wallace.
Braveheart.
The movie, which we did a whole episode on how un-Scottish that movie is.
Yeah, it was quite Scottish heavy this year.
Not on purpose.
No.
But yeah, and that is another thing. Like, normally, you choose Scotland as a backdrop because of its deep connection to its culture. Mm-hmm. And this movie completely ignores almost the entire Scottish culture.
Yep.
Except for 2 lines.
Pretty much. So, Chris,
mm-hmm.
rent and buy, stream or decline that we ever watched it despite having an audio recording of us watching it.
I think for the first time ever, I'm going to decline that I ever saw this.
Yeah.
I have many of friends who will watch just about any garbage I tell them to. And I honestly cannot think of a reason anyone needs to see this.
No.
There is no joy in it. There's not even, like, bad sections.
No.
The only reason that maybe you could watch part of this is if you're really into, like, sexy shirtless cowboys.
And blonde women with nice tits.
And even then, you could get that for free without hurting the rest of your brain.
Yeah.
So...
No, this movie is just one massive disappointment. Because I remember watching this for the first time. I rented it on... Or no. It was a Netflix DVD that I got.
Oh, yeah. I'm keeping that program alive.
Not anymore.
You're the last man standing.
No, they discontinued.
I know, but you were.
Yeah. But no, it's just again, I like what you said that it probably had potential at one point.
Yeah.
But the movie just becomes so scattered of trying to give every single little person screen time that doesn't focus on the story, and it's just a mismatch of intention, I'd say.
I completely agree. I do think that if you haven't seen this movie, don't. Go read the novel and just, like, enjoy it that way, because then at least you can skip some of the trash. You can just fast forward, you can flip ahead a few pages, and, like, enjoy it that way.
Read the sexy bits, move on.
Yeah.
Like, not even the deaths are good.
No,
like,
the deaths are bad.
Yeah.
The horror's not even good. There's nothing scary about this movie. There's nothing gory about this movie. There's not even anything visually stimulating about this movie. There's not even bright colors to keep me entertained.
Yeah.
There's occasionally some man tits. There's occasionally a naked lady. But not like in a fun, flirty way.
No.
It's just, like, there for no good reason.
Yeah, it's just a garbage attempt to try and play off of nostalgia.
It really is. And I cannot think of a single redeeming feature about it. There's not even like cool commentary on the DVD. No, not at all. But anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews. Thanks for listening. Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there.
And always check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.